This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Greetings, Gothamites. Layne here. Welcome to episode 14 of Batman Books, The Dark Knight in Prose, where the only pictures are those formed in the imagination. Today we'll be discussing chapters 9 and 10, and to celebrate reaching the halfway point of the book, I have a couple of guests with me. Hi guys, please welcome to the show John and Maggie. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you?
Hello, listeners. We are the hosts of Married with Comics and also The Rod Pod, both of which are found under the Married with Comics umbrella, as it were, at marriedwithcomics.libsyn.com. The Rod Pod's where we talk about IDW Transformers stuff.
And Married with Comics is where we talk about everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. You guys have been bringing back childhood memories of Transformers, which I haven't watched since I was probably in single-digit age. And I've been listening to that like...
Bringing people to tears was why we went into podcasting in the first place.
We just wanted to make people cry.
And we all share a love of Batman, so that's what brings us all together.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
All right. Anything we want to add before we get started, or are we ready to dive right in?
We can dive right in.
I'm ready to dive.
Chapter 9 starts on page 69, dudes. So, sorry, I had to get a Bill and Ted reference in there.
They started filming. There's pictures.
What?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a picture of them running out of a telephone booth.
Out of the booth.
Mm-hmm.
Are they making a new Bill and Ted?
Oh, you didn't
know?
Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Yeah.
It's
going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's this is seriously happening. It's about Bill and Ted realize that they've grown to middle age and they haven't written their song that saves the world yet, and now they suddenly have 24 hours to do so, or the world will end.
And they've got daughters.
They have daughters, yes.
Yeah, and they've got daughters too now.
Wow.
Yes. They just started filming like yesterday, day before, like very recent.
Nice. I've been focused so much on them remaking The Stand that all other things have kind of... Plus Spider-Man coming out today.
Yeah, gotta see that.
It's a good time to be a geek.
No kidding.
All right. Chapter 9, Scene 1. Not another word was exchanged between the two men for several hours. Then, as night descended on Wayne Manor, its owner descended to the Batcave. Alfred watched him go, his noble face expressionless. More hours passed. In his private suite of rooms, Alfred sat before a magnificent zebrawood desk, running his left hand gently over the inlaid top of black-veined, dark green marble as his right hand cradled his jaw. His deep-set hazel eyes had that particular glaze produced by focus on the middle distance. With the exception of the gentle rhythmic movements of his left hand, to an observer he might have been cast in stone. In the Batcave, a man caught between states of being sat in the same position. The man wore the Batman's costume, but with the cowl retracted so that his head was bare. The final stage in the transformation from dilettante to vigilante, the specially designed gloves of titanium mesh laced inside fireproof fabric, lay untouched on the clear Lexan surface of the utility table. The man's normally blue eyes were fixed in the same middle-distance stare as Alfred's, but this halfway man's eyes were obsidian, reflecting all, revealing nothing but that reflection.
Hours pass before Alfred comes back to himself, exhausted but resolute. He remembers something his father said to him many years ago. A man must stand. Be he the first to stand or the last, a man must stand. And if there is only one man, then that man must stand alone. The old butler stands and walks stiffly to a cherrywood bookcase. He grabs one of the lower shelves and pulls upward. It requires all his strength. For several moments, nothing happens. But then an empty section of the bookshelf rotates, revealing the most goddamn extra cribbage board on Earth.
I forgot to let that in there.
I don't This thing is made with the best craftsmanship you have ever seen. Bone white wood with a slight yellow cast, which is actually hand-carved ivory. Alfred opens the hinged box and withdraws a handful of playing pegs, also carved from ivory. Half were tipped in rubies, the other half in emeralds, because of course. Each crafted so minutely that only a sense of the color is experienced. The actual microgems cannot be seen with the naked eye. This cribbage board will allow you to score 19 points with one hand.
That's a cribbage joke.
Well, that's...
Very niche audience. Sorry.
From inside a liquor cabinet, Alfred withdraws a velvet pad of royal purple. He lays the pad on the desk and places the cribbage board upon it, then begins to arrange the playing pegs with the precision of a neurosurgeon. Finally, Alfred inserts one more peg, and as soon as the tiny peg locks in, a thin tray pops out of one side of the board. The tray contains a key. The key turns to set off an elaborate Rube Goldberg device which catches a mouse from across the room. No. Alfred takes the key from the most goddamn extra hiding spot for a key, goes to his bedroom, and pulls on the left bedpost. Previously invisible seams open, revealing a keyhole. He inserts the key, turns it, pulls upward, and extracts a long metal cylinder. He closes the bedpost and goes back to his study, where he opens the cylinder with something like a religious rite. A tightly rolled tube of papers emerges, which Alfred lays flat on the desk and anchors at the corners with paperweights. Next, he opens a slim black aluminum attaché case. He inserts the papers into it, face down, checking for precise alignment. Once this is done, he connects a plug from the case into a wall socket. Alfred presses a button, and a faint humming fills the room. Tiny wisps of fog come through pores in the case. The humidity acts as a restorative for the papers, which were not of archival quality. Alfred is unwilling to trust them to a photocopier. This preservation restoration box is one of a kind. Now, over the years, Alfred has done this many times. Each previous time, when finished, he'd returned the papers to their hiding place. But this time, Alfred stands holding the newly rejuvenated papers in his hands for several minutes. Then he leaves the room.
Our notes. So, I don't see that Alfred is a big believer in hide a key. So I'd hate to know what happens if they ever accidentally lock the door to Layne Manor, and
I just imagine like a fake log in the front garden somewhere with the key to Layne Manor stuck up inside.
Which Bruce has just done in Alfred's size every time he goes for it. It's like,
I mean, it's a pretty hardcore way to hide a key, but I will bring into question the Waynes owning ivory.
What, are you kidding? It's at least as old as Thomas and Martha, and they probably hunted their own elephants.
I'm saying that's the problem. You don't have ivory. That's not politically correct.
I did put a boo next to the mention of ivory in my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we'll just say that it's been passed down from his great-great-great-grandfather,
who was given the ivory for free from an elephant who just gave
that died of natural causes,
Yes.
happy of old age.
And he willed it to him. Yes.
I really hope that that's true.
It is. It's a book. It can be anything you want.
It's true.
Batman trivia for you, though. Alfred's father's name. I know this.
Oh, he has a dad?
Yes. You're not going to believe this.
Is it Alfred?
It is not.
Oh, okay.
It is Jarvis.
Oh,
Nice.
Jarvis Pennyworth is his father's name. Mentioned
Another perfect butler name.
Exactly.
Yes.
His father presumably was named Jeeves.
Jeeves, exactly, yes. But, I mean, Jarvis Pennyworth, it doesn't get any more British than that.
Except maybe Benedict Cumberbatch.
Right, but he gets a pass because he's perfect.
Yeah. I think Benedict Cumberbatch is at the peak, at the pinnacle. You cannot possibly get more British than that without being royalty.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
agree.
Well done on the British accent, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
You sounded very passably British.
Well, that's what I was trying to do, just hamming it up. But most of my notes are saved for the next section.
Okay.
In which I have several. But this is, considering what is in this, which we'll get to, it's just weird that it had all of this elaborate things, not only to get the key, but then to get the actual items, and then this preservation method.
And having this the one-of-a-kind archival case, or the attaché. Did he go to Lucius Fox and say, Lucius, I must preserve these papers. Make something for me, but don't tell Bruce.
Sounds legit, Jeeves.
Legit. I was wondering if that's like a real thing that exists.
Archival paper?
No.
Oh.
The restoration box thingy. Like, is that an actual device, or is this just another cool technology bit from the Batcave that Vachss has created?
It's a smaller version of a humidor. I've seen the principle that they're doing.
Okay.
I might be talking out of my ass, but I did some stuff where we would look into archives, and they had a lot of things that had to be kept humid.
Well, no, right. No, I understand it. I know. I just haven't heard of ever, like, a portable one in an attaché case, but...
Yeah, I mean, there might be some, like, in very specialized preservation and conservation type of things where maybe they have to travel to...
Right.
You know, I took some archive classes in my librarianship classes, so I just know a little bit, but one thing I would tell Alfred is don't roll them up tightly in a little cylinder. Like, lay them flat somewhere in a cool room, less than 60 degrees, and keep an eye on the humidity. There's no reason for this James Bond shit.
I know. I mean,
he's worried about the quality of the paper.
Exactly. I mean, this is Wayne Manor. There's like at least 80 rooms that Bruce has never been in. He could just leave it lying flat on a table somewhere, and Bruce would never see it. He barely leaves the Batcave.
It's one part I loved about the 89 Batman when we did the commentary, because I hadn't seen it since it was on VHS tape, and we get to the scene with Vicky and Bruce on that long table, and she's like, do you like eating in here? Oh yeah. I don't think I've ever been in here before. And I'm like, yep. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, he could probably literally put this out on a hallway table, and Bruce would never find it.
My question, though, is... And we haven't gotten to the part where we find out what these papers are that Alfred has mishandled throughout the years. But why does he want to keep them such a secret?
I was curious about that as well. It seems like, especially since, we can say that Bruce Wayne is at least, mid-20s here, if perhaps older. I can see, like, okay, I'm keeping this from him until maybe he's 18 or 20, until he figuring out what it is to be an adult.
Especially the moment that Bruce lets Alfred in on the whole, I'm going to put on a costume and have a secret identity. Mm-hmm. You'd think
that reminds me of your mother.
Right. But we'll get to that.
Oh, snap.
Oh, man.
All right. Chapter 9, Scene 2. Even in that psycho-emotional borderland between alternate states of consciousness, the Batman possessed a sense of his surroundings so delicate that it could detect the slightest molecular shifts in the empty air. A motion sensor so refined it exceeded the abilities of any device known to science. Even seated at his desk with his back to the elevator entrance to the Batcave, he could feel the presence of another. Yet his psyche was unalarmed. It could only be Alfred. With an effort of will, the Batman turned his head, watching his old friend, his oldest friend, approach. Unable to speak, the unmasked face raised an eyebrow, asking, why? Not, why are you here, but, why am I? Alfred had been non-verbally asked the same question many times over the years. In the past, he had been content to pat the Batman on the shoulder and assure him that, someday, all would be known to him. Such a gesture was not the hollow placation of an uninvolved parent dealing with a questioning child. It was a sacred promise from a friend who knew the truth. A true friend who would, someday, share that truth.
Seemingly knowing immediately what Alfred is speaking of, Batman's eyes snap into focus, become burning cobalt. Batman asks, "How should I?" One hand on the mask, the other near the Velcro closure of the costume. Alfred endorses neither Bruce Wayne nor Batman, replying, "Stay as you are. This is for all of you." In a rare moment of uncertainty, Batman tentatively follows Alfred to a section of the Batcave that Bruce himself never enters alone. It's set aside for the times Alfred serves as mid-mission communications and information link, sometimes for days at a time. Where the rest of the Batcave is ultra-modern, this section is a throwback to the last century. It has a pair of old oxblood leather easy chairs on a rug of red and gold. There's a white marble fireplace and an old-fashioned floor lamp with a Tiffany shade standing next to one chair. The other chair has a matching ottoman. Clearly, one chair is for reading while the other is for Alfred to catch a quick nap while waiting for the next contact from Batman, confirmed by a dark blue wool afghan draped on the ottoman. Alfred indicates for Batman to sit at the chair with the reading lamp. Once the Batman is seated, Alfred speaks. I know you are in pain. It is time you know the cause, the root cause. Depression is no stranger to you, I know. And I know how these forays into child abuse investigation have troubled you so deeply. It has all come together, as I knew it someday would. It is all connected, and you are the center. He hands a thick sheaf of papers to Batman. The Batman's eyes flick over the tiny, precise handwriting, asking whose investigator's journal it is. Your mother's. It is time you knew, not just what she did, but what she was. Read it all. I'll be right here. When you're finished, I will answer any questions that you have.
Batman's costume has Velcro in it.
So high-tech.
Yes, that was my thought. I can just see him shooting his grappling hook and swinging valiantly to rescue, and you just hear
Oh.
Well, because that stuff wears out. You gotta replace Velcro after a while.
I knew I should have gotten the eyelets.
Yeah. Those button hooks.
I wonder how his Batman is supposed to look, if he's basing him off of the movie Batman, or the Batman in the comics, or the Adam West Batman. You know, if it's like a gray shirt with a blue cape, or if it's all black.
It could be if it's more of the unarmored, kind of like Adam West type stuff. I can see that being held together with some Velcro.
I was thinking also maybe like Catwoman's catsuit. It's just skin-tight leather with the Velcro closure in the back.
Every night before he goes out as Batman, Alfred has to stand there with a paintbrush and paint his costume.
Stand still, sir.
Try not to sweat tonight, so you know it makes it run.
Oh, that's so problematic.
Poor Alfred is sitting for days at a time alone in the Batcave, not really being able to leave in case Batman has a state of emergency, so is he just peeing over the side of the into an abyss?
I like to think there's an armoire with like a bidet hidden in it or something for him to use.
I do. Vachss has a pretty interesting imagination when it comes to the Batman's wonderful toys and various things that he does. I've liked the way he's described that and like his obstacle course, morning regiment, or morning exercise regiment that involves going through a giant gerbil maze
with the slanted roof, so he can practice cave wall climbing stuff, and he does meditation, and he's got a very healthy lifestyle aside from getting the crap kicked out of him by bad guys. But
But it's nice to know Alfred appreciates the finer things when he has to be penny one for like a week. He's like, I'm going to be sitting in a bloody good chair. If that's the case.
Yeah, right.
I want an Afghan. But yeah, I do really like that he puts the effort into creating these gadgets, because I didn't get to see that so much in the novelization, and it's more there for the action.
Yeah.
But when he was talking about the Batmobile and some of his gadgets, his telemetry, looking into the prison, I'm like, okay, we're getting Gadget Batman, we're getting Detective Batman.
I do like that. Detective Batman is something we don't see enough of.
I agree. I don't think we get enough Detective Batman.
Part of that's a completely different conversation, but I think part of that is once Batgirl became Oracle, she kind of took over that role.
Oh, I can see that.
In the Bat family. And now that she's Batgirl again, he hasn't quite moved back. The Batman is a complete badass with a plan for everything. Batman is
Grant Morrison's Batman. The Bat-God, yeah.
That's the one people like. But you still get the occasional story where he's doing detective things, and that's nice.
The I Know Your Secret with the Martians.
That's pretty great.
That's so good. You'll get there someday, Layne. You've got to read that. It's so good. The Bat-God is incredible. But we do tend to get a lot more punchy Batman than any other Batman right now.
But something you were saying a bit ago, Layne, just reminded me of something when it comes to the writing. The writing itself of this book compared to the novelization. In the novelization, it was all about just describing enough so that your brain would fill in the details, and that was on purpose because they were writing from the shooting script in a lot of cases and didn't have a visual reference when they started for everything. So, whereas this one is very, very visual. This guy. I want Vachss to run a D&D game. Yeah. I'm gonna know the room I'm in when he describes it and where everything is,
and probably the dimensions, and everything.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that comes from his years of being a Manhattan attorney and doing all these things with the social work. He's like, okay, I want all my ducks in a row. When I go into a courtroom, I have to have everything and know where it is. And
I believe it. When I went to school for paralegal studies, and I took some law classes, and one of the classes you have to take is legal writing. And my instructor was an English major for his undergrad before he went to law school. And then the first day he said, okay, now forget everything you've ever learned about how to write a good sentence, because we're not doing creative writing here. Legal writing is short, declarative sentences. It's C-spot, run. And there is some of that in Vachss's writing. It kind of seems like someone who doesn't get to use a lot of descriptors very often who suddenly does. So sometimes I find the writing style is a little stilted, but I kind of giggle because I think I kind of know where that's coming from. It's just a very specific style of writing. When you're doing legal writing, you've got to get your point across.
Yeah.
You don't need the flowery stuff. You've just got it. You have to tell a story, but not with too many adjectives, definitely not with adverbs and things like that. So it's, I find it to be an enjoyable writing style.
It's kind of reflective of Batman and Gotham City in its way. It's not pretty, kind of like a Jeep. There's no smooth curves. It's not an attractive vehicle, but damn, it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, Gotham is definitely rough around the edges, but it has an elegance of its own. And I think Vachss's writing style kind of has that same thing.
I think Vachss gets Gotham. Every writer always adds their own take on Gotham, and his is Gotham-y enough.
I couldn't see him writing a fairy tale like a Princess and the Frog story, but Gotham, perfect. Chapter 9, Scene 3. Hour after hour slipped by. If the seated figure was aware of this, he gave no sign. Alfred occasionally arose from his own chair, sometimes to work the kinks out of his legs, sometimes to bring a glass of water to the seated figure. The Batman sipped from the water glass unconsciously, not aware he was doing so, as totally absorbed in the papers before him as a heat-seeking missile locked onto its target. The seated figure's breathing dropped into pre-combat mode, slow, measured, and deep. He read as though each word were a multifaceted diamond, holding them up to the light one at a time, observing the refraction, the color, the depth, squeezing every drop from the precious link to his mother, a link that spanned the chasm between then and now. Okay, the Batman has the ability to alter his neuromuscular system, producing in himself the same effect as a normal person would get from 8 hours of sleep. He reads the pages, rereads them, careful to keep them in their original order as the pages are not numbered. Outside, day becomes night once again. Inside, the seated figure connects his mother's life to his own. Finally, he puts the pages down, his face relaxed, his eyes closed. Alfred watched the sleep trance, watched as he had watched the boy, the teenager, and the man, watched with the patience that had allowed him to wait almost 30 years for the single moment. It is never truth that determines the course of history, Alfred mused to himself. It was the effect of truth on those who acted and, in turn, they upon it. In another few hours, he would have the answer. So, okay, Bruce is nearing 30.
Or 40, if you're figuring he was 9 years old.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, probably if he was waiting allowed him to wait almost 30 years for the single moment. So it depends on at what point he got this information.
But it seems logical that it would be after his parents were killed, because Martha wouldn't bring... Why did you say that name? I'm waiting for him to jump in. He's like waiting for, baby Bruce Wayne to come home from the hospital, and Alfred's just like, one day I will reveal your mother's secrets to you. So I figure it'll be... after the Waynes were killed.
But in my comfort zone, and this has been youthified a lot lately, but Superman should be about 30, and Batman should be about 40, or 29 and 39, if you will. Batman, I think, is just at the point, he hasn't lost a step yet, but he's not going to get any better than he is. And he's been doing it for a while. I like the idea that he's hard around the edges and grizzled. Whereas Superman is a little younger, and therefore his optimism is still allowing to pervade him.
Which is funny, because Superman came first.
Yes.
Spooperman.
He did. I mean, only by a year, but still.
I was going to ask, since you have some experience with creative writing, is it true that the Oxford comma really kind of came into being specifically for legal writing?
Probably. I am someone who adheres quite rigidly to the Oxford comma.
Same, me too.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. If you're going to list 3 things or more, use the Oxford comma.
That is my understanding as to where it came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, a professor of mine said that but she has an English background, not a law background, but it made sense to me. She said in some legal writing, if you leave out the Oxford comma, if you say, this money goes to Tom, comma, Dick, comma, and Harry, if you leave out the second comma, half the money goes to Tom, and the other half goes to Dick and Harry.
Dick and Harry, yeah.
I could see where a lawyer might be persnickety and say, if this isn't clear, so this can be interpreted in this way.
Yeah, I can believe that it was created as a form of making a sentence, or especially a list of things in a sentence, more precise. That makes sense to me.
Is this last bit you read, was that quoted from the book, or was it paraphrased?
It was quoted, the last little paragraph. Because
I was just looking at his comma usage in that, and now I'm fascinated, and we're going to have to go back and look at this, because it is never truth that determines the course of history, comma, Alfred mused to himself. Double dash. It was the effect of truth on those who acted, and, comma, in turn, comma, they upon it. All exactly proper.
Yeah, and the grammar Nazi in me appreciates it.
I know. That is something else. Because that would have been the sort of thing... Well, I guess if he's trying to mimic Alfred's sense of precision.
Alfred is so proper, he thinks with semicolons.
Yes,
exactly.
He thinks grammatically correctly. Yes, I believe it.
So what do you guys think of the Batman having this ability to alter his neuromuscular system to mimic the effect of getting 8 hours of sleep?
Because I'm Batman!
Pretty much. I think he can do it because he's Batman. I don't know if that's a real thing, but sure.
Or definitely not something he would be able to do on a regular basis, because he would do that. He's like, if I don't have to sleep, I can fight more crime.
Oh, he does that all the time.
It's true.
Vachss obviously has some sort of, or views the Batman's abilities as being like super chi. His chi is as such advanced that he's able to do video game stuff with it.
Yeah, like in one of the last chapters, he was talking about, focusing his chi, but then I'm like, okay, yeah, I got that. I studied Qigong, Tai Chi, Aikido. I've felt the little ball of heat and had pretty cool things happen, but even I still don't believe it would deflect a bullet, but, who knows? It's Batman.
Yeah. I think he was just willing the bullet to move away. His force of will, talk about a Green Lantern. Holy smokes.
That's an Elseworlds.
I know. Batman doesn't carry the green ring. He doesn't need it.
It's Emerald Knight, I think, with a K.
I actually just started, really delving into the comics on the DC Universe. I bought an e-reader so I could, curl up in bed, and I jumped to Killer Croc's first appearance. Because I kept hearing people talking about, how cool he was as kind of like a gangster and not this animal. I'm like, that really was kind of cool.
I like the early Killer Croc a lot better than how he eventually gets. I like him as just a gangster with a skin condition. That's what he was. He was more of a Dick Tracy style freak than than some alligator man.
Okay.
Yeah, and he did his gangster type of stuff, but he also didn't have any loyalties to them. When he saw Batman escaping out a door, he's just like, yeah, more power to you, whatever. He doesn't tell the other people that, hey, Batman's getting away. He's just like, I'm above it.
Yeah.
One interesting scene is, and this is getting off topic, but Batman stumbles upon Killer Croc's home, and it was very pristine and very, very homey.
I read this issue. And
when Killer Croc, he comes home and Batman's just sitting in his armchair. And Croc loses his shit. They're just basically saying, this was my house, this was my space, and you've ruined it by being here. And I'm like, I really want to learn more about this character, but I know unfortunately he doesn't stay like that. But the only time in this series so far that he loses his cool was when he feels like his safe space was violated.
It's really neat. I need to go back and read that, because Andrew Layne did a bit about Killer Croc on one of his shows.
Andrew Layne. I love Andrew Layne.
I know.
I'm not going to try a North British accent, because I just sound like I'm aping Doctor Who. Or the Doctor, the Ninth Doctor. Cool. Have you ever seen the museum grade paper? It's really cool. It feels weird.
I took a rare books class up at OSU and got to hold books that were bound in pigskin.
Wow. So
it actually felt a lot like old human flesh.
Sure.
And I'm like, the Necronomicon.
Yes. That would be my first thought, too.
And it was just so fun going through, because with the really rare manuscripts, they would go through page by page, and any little mark, they would document it so if it were ever stolen, they could say, hey, on this page, on this side of the page, there was a squash spider. Literally that type of detail. So cool. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, that sounds like a really cool class.
Lee Iacocca died.
Lee Iacocca died?
Yes.
Okay.
He was
good to know.
The creator of the Ford Mustang and the founder and the CEO of Dodge, or of Chrysler eventually.
I know from Lee Iacocca.
I'm sorry, the way you...
I didn't.
Sounded, okay.
Oh, did you not?
Yay!
Well, he's dead.
Only answering to one of you. Well, he's dead now.
All right, we'll be right back.
We'll take a promo break here, and when we return, we'll start Chapter 10.
Hey, true crime fans, have you listened to Wine and Crime yet?
We're a true crime comedy podcast hosted by three childhood friends who chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash our worst Minnesotan accents.
Each week, us gals pick a true crime topic and pair it with a delicious wine before delving into the background and psychology behind the crime.
Then we share and speculate wildly about a couple of bonkers cases related to the topic.
Past episodes include necrophilia, cults, crimes of passion, cruise ship disappearances, exorcisms gone wrong, all this over a bottle of wine, or, let's be real, 3.
Listen anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Wine and Crime Pod, and check out our website and blog at wineandcrimepodcast.com. Cheers!
Hi, John.
Hi, Maggie.
I'm still wrapping my brain around the fact that we're married.
Me too, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Aw.
Oh, hey, I was looking at these old comics and I noticed that there's
Hold
a
that thought. Why don't we talk about it on our podcast?
We have a podcast?
It seems like the logical next step. We get married, we change our names, we combine our comic collections, we start a podcast about comic books.
Well, I can't fault your logic, but there are plenty of podcasts out there already. Do you really think we'll have anything new and interesting to say?
Oh, I think we'll manage. Welcome to the Married with Comics podcast, where we constantly fuck up.
It goes from Marvel Girl to Phoenix to Marvel Girl to Jean Grey to Phoenix to Dead.
And then apparently he's so consumed with his own thoughts that he runs right past 3 monkeys in the alleyway. A brainwave camera took a picture of that guy's head. A brainwave camera.
And Ben's just basically, whatever you gotta do to stop the commies, Nick.
So join us at the Married with Comics podcast, where 2 newlyweds with a love for comics intelligently, critically, and thoughtfully discuss comic books.
Also listen as we goof around, make jokes, and make fun of John for mispronouncing names.
I do that a lot.
Sometimes we'll pick a topic and review and discuss comics that relate to the topic.
And sometimes we'll pick up a comic and see what discussion topics come up. Sometimes we'll spend an entire episode talking about how much Maggie loves Batman.
The only thing that's almost as strong as my love for you is my love for Batman.
The Married with Comics podcast. Available directly on our site at marriedwcomics.libsyn.com, on iTunes, and wherever good podcasts are found. Also, check us out at Facebook at the Married with Comics podcast.
We've got everything you need.
Welcome back, folks. Chapter 10 starts on page 77. Chapter 10, Scene 1. This scene is dialogue heavy. John, Maggie, please come to the stage for... Rest in Peace Theater is proud to present That Time Alfred and Bruce Have a Chat.
Can I...
I'm all right, Alfred. The information was just too much. It overcramped my circuits, that's all.
I understand, Master Bruce.
Do you, my old friend? Can you tell me then? Is it all true?
Without question.
My mother was an investigative sociologist.
She was.
Have you read...
No, I have not.
Yet you know what they contain.
Some of it. That was not the point, however. Your mother entrusted me with her journals, and with that trust came a pledge of honor. I was to place the journals in your hands, and no one else's, no matter what.
But when...
The timing was to be my choice. If your mother lived, she would make that choice. If she did not, it was up to me.
Not to my father?
No.
Did you know what she was investigating when she died?
Yes, I knew quite well. It was the single topic that consumed your mother for many years.
My mother, all these years I had no sense of her, just memories, baking cookies, reading me stories. I thought she was a housewife.
She was a housewife, Master Bruce, but that was never all she was.
Alfred, these journals, they seem unbelievable to me. My mother was investigating an international ring of pedophiles. These organizational charts, look, it was a perfect pyramid, a typical organized crime monolith. See here. This is how they produced the child pornography. My mother traced it all up from the roots. The procurers, the photographers, the developers, the printers, the distributors, everything. She used the classic follow the dollars investigative technique.
That technique was hardly classic when your mother used it. In fact, I believe the technique is one of your mother's great contributions to the investigative profession.
I never knew.
Your mother did not want you to know, Master Bruce. She was in a situation of great personal danger. The targets of her investigation would stop at nothing to neutralize her. In fact, her disguise was similar to your own. As the public thinks of Bruce Wayne as a playboy, the same public thought of your mother as you put it, a housewife.
But didn't my father...
You've read the newspaper accounts of their murder many times, Master Bruce. How are your parents described?
As... Dr. and Mrs. Thomas Wayne. Yes, I understand what you mean now. It was as though she had a life only as a wife. I suppose that was common back when I was born. But these papers, what she was doing, it seems so...
Dangerous?
Yes, very dangerous.
Your mother knew the dangers, Master Bruce. She was a woman of great courage, and she would not be deterred from her mission.
But if she knew who was responsible...
She knew some of the people. Your mother was the first to understand the organizational capabilities of child molesters and others who prey upon children. The world viewed such despicable creatures as isolated aberrations. Your mother was the first to link child molestation with organized crime.
You mean like narcotics or loan sharking, labor racketeering?
No, Master Bruce. The pedophile syndicates were more concerned with their personal pleasures. It apparently took quite a few of them to manufacture and distribute their filth.
How did she...
She did it all. She interviewed the child victims, she placed ads in the underground newsletters, she made undercover purchases, she paid some of the offenders for their information. She had a network of her own, a network of like-minded people around the world. Just as the pedophiles had constructed their networks, your mother and her colleagues were tracking them.
Where would she find the victims? I thought all the child abuse records were confidential.
Master Bruce, at the time your mother was doing her investigations, there was no child abuse registry. The more egregious cases were referred to the police.
And the rest were...
ignored. People your age take things like a child abuse hotline for granted. But if it wasn't for courageous people like your mother, those things wouldn't exist.
I understand. But I still don't see where she could find child abuse victims to interview. How could she...
Your mother always said that if you wanted to interview victims of child abuse, all you had to do was drive up to Belladonna Farms.
The Institution for Juvenile Delinquents? But...
Master Bruce, all you have before you are your mother's investigative journals. Those are field notes, not operational theory. Your mother's thesis was that there is no biogenetic code for criminality. She always maintained that you cannot control who you are, but you have the ultimate decision-making power over what you are.
I'm not certain that...
Behavior is truth, the ultimate truth. You are what you do. Children are born with different genetic allotments, from the color of their eyes to their intellectual capacity, but the rest is what they themselves contribute. The worst thing about the abuse of children is that it robs the victims of some of that capacity. Your mother also said that today's victim could be tomorrow's predator unless we intervene properly. She was talking about children, Master Bruce.
So my mother was a
crime fighter with a secret identity.
Bravo. You guys did great.
Thanks.
Especially with having that huge chunk thrown at you, so thank you so much for doing that.
Heck yeah.
That's fun.
I could see you, John, kind of like biting back some stuff as you were...
Well, before we get to that, man, Alfred interrupts Bruce a lot. It's like he has... Bruce barely finished like 3 sentences in that whole thing, and it's like, Master Bruce, I'm talking here. Your mother was a superwoman who instead of Elliot Ness, came up with following the money. No. Well, where should we start with this one?
There's a lot of unpacking in this little section here.
Yeah, that's why I felt, I was trying to find a cutoff spot, because usually I just do a portion of the dialogue, and I'm like, there's so much here, and so much that's kind of important to the thesis of this book that I couldn't really find a good place to cut off, and I'm like, John and Maggie can handle it. I'll just give them the whole thing.
Yeah, we're professionals. That's why we make the big bucks.
Right. Next Netflix mansions. Dollars. Yeah. I'm going to start by saying that I am all for Martha Wayne being given literally anything else to do besides being Thomas Wayne's wife. Agreed. That is the way that they put it here is exactly what she is. Yeah. I mean, for all of the eye-rolling nature of Batman v Superman in that regard, the fact that Martha was actually made as an important part of Bruce's life, that's probably the first time. It's always about Thomas, and he's always talking about missing his father, and she gets left out like a Disney princess's mother.
Yeah, basically, even like in Crime Alley, sometimes Thomas is the one to kind of step in front and protect them, and sometimes Thomas is the one who try to say, no, here's my wallet, don't hurt us. Right. So it's always Thomas doing everything.
Right.
Well, and I guess part of that is because it was 1939, and so the man, the husband, the father would intervene. In the original, which we actually just covered on the last Married with Comics, issue 33 has the first telling of his origin story. His parents don't have names in the origin story.
Oh, they do not.
And his dad does try to get between them and the robber, and he gets shot, and then the robber shoots his mom, because she's screaming and she's making noise.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds very 1930s. Mm-hmm. The guy's gotta be tough, gotta protect my family, and the woman's just gonna be hysterical.
And what that leads to just adding to the tragedy of it, with that level of chauvinistic mentality, the idea of the criminal actually murdering both of them rather than, murdering a woman would have been, that would have taken a degree of sinisterness.
Or callousness. Maybe.
It would take a particular level of callousness in order to do that at that time.
And at which point, it makes me wonder then, why then did they leave the child alive as a witness?
Yeah, well, because otherwise there'd be no Batman.
Right, but sometimes some things are a bridge too far.
Killing a child. You've already killed a woman, and not only that, but this kid's parents, so don't kill the kid, too. It's really, I think, and I'm sure Andrew Vachss could probably correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure that usually when it comes to robberies, the understanding is that murdering them is just going to complicate matters, and they tend not to then try to murder people, because that just makes it that much worse for them if they get caught.
Right.
You go from a mugging to first-degree murder because you went out with the intention to rob with a gun.
Especially in the 30s, where if you were arrested for murder, you were going to die in the electric chair.
Yeah.
Within, a week.
Yeah. In New York? Because it would have been it was in Manhattan. So...
Yep. That said, I'm just going to reach here on this shelf right here and look, it's a book on sociological theory.
I've been waiting for this.
Okay, so I am actually going back to the university next semester to finish my Soc degree. So,
yay!
And I was very disappointed to learn that with that degree, that the positions of investigative sociologist have apparently all been filled by imaginary people.
But wouldn't it be cool if it was a thing?
Well, of course it would be cool if it was a thing. This would all be cool. This is improbable. I like what Vachss is trying to do. Now, mind you, if it ultimately leads to that's why she and Thomas were murdered, I will chuck this book across the room. I am telling you now.
Okay.
Because that level of tinkering with the Bat mythos, I think that it's overstepping your mandate there.
I see.
In order to giving Martha a bit of a backstory, that's always been fair game. They've always given Thomas.
Yeah,
there's always been stories like this, so this is neat. I don't buy it for a second. I do not buy that that she decides to go all Spencer and Mrs. King on child pornographers. It seems to be a bit improbable. I understand why he's doing it, because he's making this thesis on and trying to tie it in with Batman, and it's ironic though that he eschews genetic factors, but is accidentally making the case that Batman's vigilanteism may run in the family.
And we know that Batman's vigilanteism was strongly propelled by what he witnessed as a child. So then does this imply that Martha had something that she had in her childhood that caused her to be a quote-unquote investigative sociologist?
Well, that's the other thing, and I don't want to belabor this point too much, because ultimately Vachss does good work.
Yeah, definitely.
Regardless of what I think about the various criminology theories he's using, which I will just say I disagree with the line of reasoning he's using. The causal link between being abused and becoming a criminal has not been determined. There usually when you are abused in a regular situation like this, there are several other things going on, any of which could have a determination on that. That said, rooting out child abusers is an end in and of itself that we should devote as many resources as we possibly can. And not because we're trying to save the future from criminals, but because children are being abused.
Yeah.
And for that, I tip my hat to Vachss. And I still like that he is using criminology theories in order to put forward the idea and give people resources in order to go and look up and make up their own minds on such things.
I agree.
So kudos to him.
Yeah, I mean, of all the causes to champion and to devote one's life to, I mean, I follow Andrew Vachss on Twitter, and every tweet that he posts is some factoid about child abuse. And it's deeply depressing, but someone has to do that work, and I commend him for doing that work.
Agreed.
It's almost like Alfred's father, the words that he said to Alfred when he was younger, I could almost see that almost being Vax's guiding light. even if there's only one man, then that man must stand alone. Just like some of the things that Vachss has done in his life so far, he's done more at his own risk. I mean, hats off to Mr. Andrew Vachss.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, I'm trying to find it in the scripty bits now, the "you are what you do," is that not what he says in Christian Bale's Batman? He says it's not something that defines us, it's what we do.
It's an existentialism.
No, I'm just saying, but it's...
I don't remember the line.
It's something along those lines, and I wonder if that's kind of where he got that from. I remember him saying that.
This predates.
Oh, this is before this?
Yeah, this was
right.
1990.
Never mind.
So maybe the new movie got it from here.
From him, yeah. I'm just saying that's a pretty close parallel there to the line from the movie and then the "you are what you do."
He's espousing behaviorism with that.
True.
Talking about, and that's a classic definition boiled down to that.
Yeah, I've learned enough theories in different areas of study that I usually am of the thought that it's going to be a mixture of theories. I mean, some are stronger than others, but, yes, the behaviorism, but like you said, there are going to be a million other factors in there, other environmental factors, other things that have gone on in their lives, head injuries. I mean, there's just so much, and that's what makes it so hard to predict.
And even as a sociologist type person, I'm saying that the genetics has been shown to be a factor. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that there's a crime gene that you get.
Yeah, I know my family, unfortunately, we have a lot of alcoholics in my family. Mm-hmm. For that reason, I tend to stay away from alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Right. Same here.
Because of my genetic predisposition to an addictive personality, I have to kind of curb my behavior.
Right. And plus, there's also the social forces aspect, too. I mean, this usually goes with poverty. Poverty and crime tend to correlate. All of these things can go on. And when we're talking about, like, social situations that can allow these sorts of people to gather below the radar, which wouldn't be able to happen if places like the projects in Baltimore, for example, mm-hmm. or in Columbus, Ohio, off of like Short North, various places. Nobody goes into those places because they're dangerous. They're dangerous. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so people can live amongst dangerous people and do awful things.
Right.
And that's able to continue because of that.
And no one goes in to stop it.
So it's long and the short of it is there is no one answer to any of these questions, which is very sad. Yeah. Which is why you have to approach it from every angle like this. Mm-hmm. It's like you were saying that it's a multitude of theories. I mean, approaching it from this angle while other people are approaching it from different angles will lead to some notes being compared and possibly new truths will come out of it.
Yeah. Anyway, that went deep. Ready to move on to the next scene? Chapter 10, Scene 2. It was a long time before the child stopped crying, but when he did, it was a fully focused adult who took his place. The seated figure surged to his feet, oblivious to the contrast between the Batman costume and Bruce Wayne's blandly handsome face. He stalked over to the giant computer, his mouth set in a straight line. He ran page after page of his mother's journal through an optical disc scanner, watching as each page was converted to computer-readable type and simultaneously pulled into one of the huge machine's 90-gigabyte parallel hard drives. Then he rapidly typed a series of commands.
I think I got 90 gig on my phone.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, this is 1990, man.
As a quick aside, the novelization of Star Trek II, they talk about the computer space and that hilarious. The Genesis
Nothing
machine apparently is less than a terabyte, so.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Bruce searches the computer's databases for all of the names mentioned in his mother's journal. Each name fell into a pattern. Deceased, homicide, gunshot. Missing, presumed dead. Deceased, suicide, suspicious circumstances, and so forth. Until one name comes up. Whereabouts unknown. Last information indicates residence in Udon Kai, a country in Southeast Asia with no age of consent for sexual intercourse. A summary of all the names comes to names, 77. Deceased, 71. Missing, presumed dead, 3. Whereabouts unknown, 2. Whereabouts known, 1. Only 3 of them may still be alive. Only one of them for sure. Bruce asks Alfred if any of the men knew that Martha was on their trail, and Alfred says, oh yes, they knew quite well. Bruce turns back to the computer and types, Case number 1, the case of his parents' murder. The gun used to kill them has never been recovered. A perpetrator was apprehended and died resisting arrest. The Waynes had been shot 7 times with a 9mm with non-regulation ammunition, and the killer's name was Joe Chill. Pain throbs in Bruce's head, and he commands himself to follow the trail of thought. He looks for known associates of Joe Chill. There are none.
Batman waits for the trembling in his hands to disappear, then continues his computer search. There have been 77 inquiries from the GCPD regarding the murder of his parents, and another 31 from the media. Inquiries outside assignment for the media? None. Inquiries outside assignment for the police? 1. A Lieutenant Alexander Horton, GCPD, Commander, Sex Crimes Unit. Batman asks, why would the head of the Sex Crimes Unit be asking about the hunt for my parents' murderer? Alfred encourages him to keep searching. Batman commands the computer to cross-index Lieutenant Alexander Horton to Martha Wayne. Searching. Please wait. Lieutenant Alexander Horton had 7 verified meetings with a woman named Barbara Jane Slocum. This catches the attention of Alfred and Bruce, because they were so surprised to see a woman's name in Martha Wayne's journal. The computer states that Barbara Jane Slocum is dead by suicide. Bruce commands the computer to bring up the information regarding the autopsy. Nothing stands out until they come to the name of the investigating officer, Lieutenant Alexander Horton. Ignoring Alfred's involuntary gasp from behind him, Batman types bank records, Barbara Jane Slocum. Within seconds, the computer had told a truth that had been hidden from human eyes for decades. Currency transfers from a bank in Udon Kai to Barbara Jane Slocum, ranging from $25,000 to $100,000, each transfer preceding a meeting between her and Lieutenant Horton. Alfred mutters, how brazen. Bruce replies, not so much. All the transfers were done in the pre-computer age, and before banks had to report currency transactions of 10,000 or more like they have to do now. Alfred suggests the IRS. Bruce turns back to the computer and soon finds that all of Barbara Jane Slocum's transactions had been reported as gifts from her uncle William X. Malady. William X. Malady is also the one person the computer identifies as still alive. Alive and living in Udon Kai. As far as Lieutenant Horton ever reported, his income never exceeded his police paycheck. Now that Bruce has found the trail, the other pieces are easy to find. A few years back, Horton purchased a Cadillac convertible, a 40-foot cabin cruiser, a condo on the 9th hole of a golf course in Florida, and his gambling losses averaged more per year than his entire police salary.
Within weeks after each currency transfer to Slocum, some significant event had been recorded in Martha Wayne's journals. A raid on a kiddie porn factory that had been planned for months failed. The inhabitants had cleared out the night before. A witness prepared to testify against a pedophile ring had been thrown from the roof of a government building in downtown Gotham. Suitcases full of evidence against a child prostitution syndicate had disappeared from the police evidence locker. The last currency transfer, and the biggest, had been 2 weeks before an event that tipped the balance in favor of the child sex merchants, an event that had never been connected to the secret war raging in the underground. The killing of Martha Wayne. The computer screen's paper-white glow filled the Batcave, but the man who sat before it saw only a red haze. So, we got motive along with means and opportunity now.
Yes, that are the 3 things that you need.
And you had mentioned earlier about if this led to the reason why they were killed, and
yeah.
it is a big, probably like one of the biggest creative liberties I think any Batman writer has taken. I think DC gave him a little leeway. I'm going to ask him about it.
In terms of it being used as a motive for the Wayne's murder, my argument would be, while I'm not a fan of the Joe Chill version of the Batman origin, I do myself prefer that the Waynes were killed by an act of random violence.
Me too.
Right, me too.
Yeah, I just do, and I think a lot of people do. But if you're going to go the route with Joe Chill, then why not give them some kind of a background as to what happened then?
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking in hyperbole when I said I was going to throw the book. I mean, it's obvious that that's what's happening here, and I have to be super angry fan defending of him. Yeah, it absolutely works for this universe that he's created.
Right.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And that it works on this. It's not my favorite, but whatever.
It's just a different kind of way of telling a story. Not like a personal attack on Batman fans.
No.
Or anything like that.
Oh no, it was just him using Batman as a vehicle for his life's work. And I gotta, like you said, when I first read this, I'm like, Martha was the target all along. It kind of pulled me back a little bit, but at the same time, this is Vachss's book. This is not canon. This is just another version of the story. And no matter what, I'm here for it.
I think that's a good way to approach it.
And I got all kinds of stuff to say, but you'll have to have us on again toward the end, because most of the stuff I have to say about the book overall, I put a lot of thought into the various effectiveness of using Batman as the means to tackle this problem.
I would love to have you guys back.
Well, that's good. If she would have just said no,
she would have been honest.
Yes, she would have been honest.
That would be kind of curious how Superman would have handled such a thing.
It depends on who you ask.
How Superman would have handled what?
His parent, if his parents had been killed.
There's an Elseworlds story called "Speeding Bullets" by J.M. DeMatteis, and it's an Elseworlds story where Kal-El's rocket ship lands at Wayne Manor. And Thomas and Martha raise him as their son Bruce.
I remember hearing of this.
And during the origin story, he looks up and his heat vision picks that moment in order to turn on, so he actually melts the guy's face off.
Oh boy.
We wind up getting a much more brutal Batman from this, and
interesting.
It's one of my favorites.
I would read that. There's also Injustice.
Injustice, yes.
Where you see how Superman would react to something similar, at least, and it's not good. It's not good.
You don't want to get on Superman's bad side. You don't want to flip that switch. He's got a long, slow fuse that burns, but man, if you get it going,
it's not going to end well.
It's not going to be good.
Yeah, no.
There's a Alan Moore story called "For the Man Who Has Everything," which is a story that...
It's a good story.
It is, and it deals with exactly what you're talking about, and it was probably the first story to do so.
Oh, where Superman actually gets to let loose on someone because Mongol is tough enough to take a Superman, but we're getting a little off topic.
Go for it.
It's hard to talk about Batman without mentioning Superman, because they are best friends.
The favorite image I have in my head is of whenever Superman has to fly Batman somewhere and they're getting up in the atmosphere and it's getting cold and he has to wrap him up in his cape like a little bat baby.
I was just gonna say, like a little bat baby.
Oh, I need to find... There's a guy who draws little cartoons of Batman and Superman. I'll have to find it and send you a couple of my favorites.
Ooh, yes.
There's a recurring one where Superman has nightmares of Batman and he'll wake up crying or wake up in a fetal position sucking his thumb, and it's wonderful.
That's adorable. I would love to read that. That sounds great.
Okay, so probably my biggest issue I have with all of this is, imagine the year of the crime, the year of the murder. Captain Gordon, maybe at this point, Lieutenant Gordon, going up to the butler and saying, did the Waynes have any enemies? Do you know of anyone who might have wanted to hurt them?
Oh, I know where she's going with this.
Gordon and Alfred just rolls away the papers and tucks it into his bedpost and says, not at all.
Yeah.
I do not know. I have to save this for Master Bruce when he is of age. But I do not believe that they had any enemies. So that's my biggest problem with this.
The good job. That one slipped went right over my head.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that. Alfred lied to the police.
I was too busy looking at all of these civil rights violations that he's doing. I mean, he's hacked into literally everywhere.
Fair point.
But
yes.
He's able to get hospital records, bank transactions, IRS reports. I can't even get a copy of my IRS 1040 from last year without jumping through a hoop. Bruce pushes one button, and there somebody from 20 odd years ago is
Information in the Sunshine Act, my ass,
and ready to be cross-indexed with obscure things. How did he get his mother's journals ready to cross-index already?
He must have used his file from that earlier episode.
I was going to point out the style of searching that he has to do. Because it's almost as if the Bat computer is kind of running on DOS.
He's doing Alexis Nexus search is what he's doing.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. It's like, what are these slashes? Why colons? What's going on
There was
here?
the internet. There wasn't Google.
I didn't have to do this as a child.
I remember when I was in 4th grade, I would come inside from recess 5 minutes early with another student to help our teacher set up Oregon Trail because it was computer lab time and we had to go in and like type all this stuff in.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of this brought back some memories.
That game is the I love Oregon Trail.
Generations of people.
Yes,
That's
generations
gone
of people have played that game.
Gen X down to millennials have all played.
And I
Oregon
played
Trail.
the old, like, the greeny version of that game and the newer updated one for, our Windows XP or whatever it was at the time.
The thing is I was stupidly good at that game.
Well, you have to start as the banker.
You start as the banker and you load up on
Salt.
Salt and ammunition, and then you just get good at hunting. So I didn't get the whole jokes about dying of dysentery because I never died of dysentery. I always got to the end because I was cheating. But
I think what this means is we need to start an Oregon Trail podcast, but right now we're on Layne's podcast.
Okay.
So I'm here for it.
I love Oregon Trail. I would love to play that game again.
For a short time, Facebook actually had, or some company using Facebook, had a little Oregon Trail game that was so cutely animated, and I loved it. And it was like one of the better free versions of Oregon Trail I'd ever seen. And then it went away. I think maybe they had some copyright issues. I'm not sure.
I think
like an ephemeral mist.
You can still find the original around with a little bit of searching.
Because you can play the original Zork text-based games for freezies
on the
internet. I would imagine you could find the original Oregon Trail, too.
You can try to play the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy text-based game.
Didn't know there was one.
Oh, if you're a masochist, you can play that game.
Well, space is 365 degrees. How do you tell it where you want to go?
Well, especially when it has Douglas Adams' sense of humor and love of syntax jokes. So picture how terrible Zork is when you're like trying to say, go left. I see no left here. No, go left. Leave room. You do not have
You're not in a room.
Listen, you.
Listen, Toots.
Listen, Toots.
My grandma had an old TV with feet, the ones where you turn the knob and have to wait about 2 minutes for the little dot to come into a picture, the beautiful old TV. Ones where you can feel the static electricity, crackling from a foot away. And my games, I would play on that. I would have a Pitfall, Frogger, and Pong, and some Pac-Man, but I rage quit that a few times.
Atari 2600?
Yep.
Yeah. Old school. That was...
Yeah.
It was Frogger and Qbert were my games on the 2600.
Yeah.
I started off with, I think it was a Nintendo N64, maybe? One of those? No, I think, something like that.
I played a lot of NES. That was probably the game I played the most games on, but...
That's some good shit.
My brother and I worked out a lot of sibling rivalry with some Mario Kart.
Nice!
Oh, the first Mario Kart for the NES is still the best Mario Kart. Fight me. Yes.
Changed my mind.
I remember the day that he had, because this was pre-internet where you could go on and really find all the cheats and things like that. And we were playing Rainbow Road on the 64, I believe it was. Nintendo 64.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had it down so you accelerate it at the right time, so you do this little zoom start. Well, one or the other of us did the little zoom start and started going over that first hill, but kind of went off course and ended up flying off into space, waiting for the little cloud guy to pick us up. But instead of that happening, the person landed on the track about halfway up the track. Oh. And I'm like, you motherfucker! you just jumped the track, and yeah.
Wow.
So with that reaction, I'm guessing it was probably him who did it. So this is bringing back some deep-seated rage in me. So after that, it was always trying to find that sweet spot where you could go off the hill and fly over and land on the track.
That's crazy.
Awesome.
I did not know that was a thing.
Now I'm trying to remember, did NES even have Mario Kart, or am I thinking Super Nintendo?
Oh, it might have been SNES.
Whichever.
Super Nintendo, Super?
I played that on so many systems now.
I have no idea. I'm more of a PlayStation gal myself.
Me too.
I've had every iteration of a PlayStation.
Me too.
So
I started with 3, now I have 4, and I actually just started the PS4 Spider-Man last night, so I'm proud of myself for going to sleep.
Oh, it's
and
so
work.
good.
That is the best game.
So good.
That's not called Red Dead Redemption.
Right.
2.
I am a Red Dead Redemption junkie.
It was so weird, after playing Arkham Knight for a solid month, going to Spider-Man, I'm like, oh, daytime.
Right, exactly.
Oh,
Bright colors.
At least the controls won't be a problem. It's pretty similar to... I think so.
Yeah, not too bad. To Arkham or to the previous Spider-Man?
To Arkham. The Arkham City controls were almost identical to it, I thought.
Yeah, it's not too bad. There's one, though, where I want to block with Batman, but it doesn't do that with Spider-Man, so I keep getting my ass handed to me. But once I get back into the right controls...
Whenever I go back and forth between Red Dead Redemption and Grand Theft Auto, I keep trying to make my horse brake the wrong way, but in Red Dead Redemption, when you hit that trigger, you shoot someone. Or your horse.
Slightly different.
I keep trying to whistle for my car.
You should whistle for your car. Anywho.
All right, the last scene. Chapter 10, Scene 3. 3 hours later, Bruce Wayne and Alfred sat across from each other in the sunken living room of Wayne Manor. Suddenly, Bruce got to his feet and began pacing. All my life, Alfred, all my life I have wondered why my parents were killed, why such horrors exist. In honor of my parents, I devoted my life to fighting crime. But you know what? I haven't been fighting crime, old friend. I've been fighting criminals. And now I know they're not the same. I'm not Bruce Wayne, whoever that is. That's not me. For so long I've wondered why I come alive only as the Batman. Alfred, now I know. Bruce Wayne is a hollow man, a convenient disguise, that's all. The Batman is a warrior. The pacing man suddenly halted, spinning back on one heel and bringing both arms down to trail against his path, a martial arts blocking maneuver beyond the comprehension of Bruce Wayne. The man faced his old friend squarely, his voice deepening with conviction. I am a warrior, from a warrior descended. My mother gave birth to Bruce Wayne, but her work, her life, gave birth to Batman. Her death only speeded the process. Master Bruce, the criminal underworld has always feared me, the Batman interrupted. For good reason, perhaps. From this moment on, what they need to fear is my mother, the completion of my mother's work. Alfred nods gravely, saying that Bruce's mother knew he'd have her journals someday, and what effect they might have on him. In fact, the effect is why Alfred waited so long to give him the journals. Bruce tells him that he did the right thing. Then Alfred interrupts, saying that there is one more thing he must give him, a message from his mother. He leaves the room, returning with the parchment scroll tied with the black ribbon. He hands it to Bruce, who carefully removes the ribbon and opens the scroll. The scroll reveals Japanese pictographs, and below are some words in English. It is a haiku that Martha wanted Bruce to have before he walks the path marked for him. Bruce Wayne looked at the parchment, but it was the Batman who listened. Warrior, heed this. When you battle with demons, aim not at their hearts.
Well then.
What else are you supposed to aim at then? Like their heads?
Do either of you read the Dark Tower series?
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, yes. It's the only Stephen King I've ever read, and I loved it.
Yeah, I love it. So that part about, when you kill, aim not at their hearts.
I kill with my heart, mother.
I do not aim with my hand, I aim with my mind.
Oh, yeah.
A man who aims with his hand has forgotten the face of his
father.
I love those books. So
in
much.
This one, I almost feel bad making jokes about this, but that's what we do.
That's what you do.
No, I mean, I just get the idea of him sitting there and Bruce is reading the thing. He's like, oh, bloody hell, the scroll. That leaves the room and has to go through the same elaborate thing as before, from a different place. This is in the kitchen somewhere, and he's has to kick different parts of the floorboards, and something comes up.
Brilliant!
He has to go up to the roof and change one little tile.
Wave around the lightning rod and hope.
Oh, I'm sorry, Master Bruce. I was supposed to have given this to you when you were 20.
Oh, my bad.
10 years ago?
I feel like Bruce / Batman is taking this withholding of information rather well.
Yeah. Well...
Someone has a penchant for withholding information from literally everybody he works with.
But that doesn't mean he wants it withheld from him.
No, that would be the exact opposite of what he usually wants.
Yeah, I know.
He doesn't handle that very well.
No, but...
It's Alfred.
It is Alfred, and Alfred, I think, gets a free pass. Alfred, I think, gets a free pass for pretty much anything.
Alfred is the only person...
He draws little bats in the peanut butter.
Yes,
exactly.
Little bats in the peanut butter.
Alfred is the only person who could get away with pulling something like this and get forgiven for it. I don't think even Dick could do it.
Oh, God, no. If Dick withheld information from him, are you kidding me?
Yeah, he would have been Nightwing a long time ago.
Yeah, he would have kicked him out of the bat nest and made him fly on his own.
Yeah.
I mean, Barbara and Batwoman withhold stuff from him all the time.
And it pisses him off all
the time. It does,
time.
but that's because it's like, turnabout's fair play. Let me list the following crossovers, in which you did the exact same thing. Let's just start with No Man's Land, and then moving on into
one.
Batman, Murderer Batman Fugitive, and then again in Court of Owls.
I was just going to say Court of Owls. I'm learning. Yeah, it's a long list. But no, that's a good point. He is withholding information from Batman, and for years, and about something that is very sensitive to Batman, or to Bruce and his parents, especially his mom.
This Batman especially is being very philosophical and thoughtful about the idea, because he's actually achieved something that very few Batmans in any given universe ever get to, an actual real understanding for why his mother and father were killed, and a person to go punch about it.
Yeah.
So
Batman likes to punch his problems whenever he can.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I love about this book, is that it's providing Batman with a problem he cannot punch. And it is affecting him. Mm-hmm. He is being in the book up to this point, he is making mistakes, one of which even led to the death of a goon. Because
he was letting his emotions get to him and cloud his actions.
Right.
He was acting more violent than he normally would. Instead of just defending those two nurses and maybe breaking a bone, he gives the dude a compound fracture. He doesn't catch the guy going over the roof. So I think he feels that his anger, he's learning some of this with going around with Deborah Kane and finding these things that he can't deal with. So he's taking it out on people that he can punch, but that's kind of a misplacement of some of his anger. Right. Mm-hmm. And there's a line earlier in the book, I can't remember which chapter, but it was really, it shows the potential of this storyline really changing who Batman is on a fundamental level. And the line was something along, I can't remember the beginning of it, but it said, with him doing all this stuff, it was challenging his sense of justice. Yeah. Mm. And that's a big fundamental shift in him as a character. Mm-hmm. So if all along, he's going for justice, he's fighting justice. And when he has that sense of justice challenged, I could see that potentially just taking all the air out of his sails and either feeling that this isn't something I can punch, this is too big, this is something that's always going to be here, so I'm just wasting time.
But luckily, he now has someone he can punch.
Deborah Kane.
Yes. No, Master Bruce, you've learned all of the wrong lessons. Get back here.
I forgot that her name was Deborah Kane, because there's too many Kanes. Because there's one Kane he's related to, there's another Kane he's not related to, but who is still in the Bat family, and now there's a third Kane.
And there's Bob Kane.
And then there's Bob Kane, who
helped Bill Finger
create Batman. He was standing very close by at the time.
And then you have what's his face who played Alfred. What's his name? Oh shoot!
Michael Caine.
Yeah,
Michael Caine. Too many. Why did you say that name?
Have you guys seen the previews for the new Batwoman series?
Yes,
I did. Yeah.
Oh my god,
Ruby Rose looks great.
She looks great.
Yeah, she looks like a Wayne. Yeah.
She's got the arrogance, she's got the confidence, she's got a good look, she does a really good American accent.
I love Batwoman as a character. She's been great especially since the New 52 and on from
she's
there.
Gotten very good
and Rebirth.
Batwoman's neat. It's for, if you want Batman, but a girl, then you read Batwoman.
If you want Batman and boobs.
Yes, I was gonna say boobs, but I don't know what your rules are. But yeah, no, Batwoman's great.
I know too little about Batwoman, so I'm looking forward to learning some more about, of course, like how closely they stick to her character on what is it, the CW or whatever it is. I don't know, but I'm sure it'll prompt me to read more of her stuff on DC.
I'd recommend I don't know how recent the app goes to, but I think it has pretty much all Batman. The Rebirth Detective Comics series, where I don't know which one it starts, but
actually, yeah, I just read some of that last night.
Oh, I love that. Where it's where Batman, Batwoman, and Tim and
is that with Clayface
and Clayface and all.
This Rebirth had Gotham and Gotham Girl.
Yeah, that's Batman. That's the Detective Comics that was out at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Has a different. And I'm curious to see. You'll have to let me know what you think about the Gotham Girl story and how that goes forward. Tim,
I didn't read that one, so I don't know.
Tom King is rather polarizing.
Mm-hmm. I actually it was like a 6-series run, I believe, a 6-issue run. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually did finish that, and at first when I saw Gotham and Gotham Girl, I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Really?
They did a good job.
That was my first reaction, which I think is why I didn't really get around to reading it.
I was like, how is he going to get out of this? Oh, right. He's got Superman on speed dial. Superman, please stand down.
Yeah, I did tear up a little bit when Gotham Girl was kind of dealing with her issue, her loss, and just was basically psychotic for a while. And Batman kind of pulls her into a hug, and she just says, I don't feel good. And he's like, I know. And I'm like, damn it. You got me right in the feels.
Well, cool.
Fun fact for Chapter 10. In Japanese, haiku are traditionally printed in a single vertical line, while haiku in English often appear in 3 lines parallel to the 3 phrases of Japanese haiku. Previously called hoku, haiku was given its current name by the Japanese writer Masaoka Shiki at the end of the 19th century.
I felt like such a nerd the day I found out that when we write haiku, we do it in the 5-7-5 because the syllables are as close as we can get to what a Japanese haiku is, because the languages are vastly different. I love poetry. I'm a poetry geek.
Do they have to? Does it have to be about nature, or is it?
Doesn't have to be, but they typically are.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you guys want to unpack about this?
One final thing that I wanted to say about this, about the book, is that we being the royal we, the nerd we, talk a lot about what you can change about Batman and still have him be Batman. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that a lot of the other podcasters that we've been talking to, kind of along those lines, argue that you can change a lot about Batman and still have him be Batman. He's a very versatile character, and he's rather resilient to change. You can change a lot of things, and he's still, the core essence remains the same.
Look how often he changes Robins.
Exactly. Yeah, he goes through Robins like purses, but he just empties one out and organizes into the next one.
This one got hit by a crowbar.
Oh no! Don't make fun of it. That's so sad. No, but my point is that we've seen Batman in comic books and on television and on the big screen and on the radio, and this is the first time I've encountered Batman in a novel form. Not as in like unique, but in the form of a novel. And I think it's really interesting that Batman still translates to just the written word. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to be in a visual medium or audio because I mentioned radio before. But I really think it's interesting that Andrew Vachss, I don't know if he, set out choosing that he wanted to do a Batman story. I think I sent to you, Layne, one of the questions I thought to ask him was if he found that Batman was a good vehicle for telling the kind of story that he wanted to tell. I personally kind of think he chose well. I think Batman is a really good way of telling a story about child abuse. If this is the thing that you champion, if this is the thing that you want to put a dent in with your life, and writing a fictional story with a very popular comic book character is one of the ways you're going to go about doing it, which is brilliant. I think he did a very good job.
I just wish it could have been Daredevil, because Daredevil
would have been a good choice too, because he's also a lawyer. But Bruce is a philanthropist. He's got a lot of money to throw around, and if anything about Matt, if we know anything about Matt Murdock, it's that he's broke.
Yes.
All of the time.
I'm just saying that it's a lot like a Daredevil story with Batman, slipping up. It's a lot like the current story running through Daredevil, where he's lost a step and bad things happen. But
all right, so Maggie is going to read the email comment that she sent to me. This is a rare case where I can have a comment from someone and then have that person read the comment on the air.
Yeah. Okay, so I said, "Hi, Layne. Just got done listening to chapters 7 and 8 and wanted to drop you a line. I've very much been enjoying Vachss's descriptive writing style. I'll have more to say on that when we're on the show. Which may be when we're reading this. Hi, me from the future. I agree with your instinct in the hand-to-glass-to-hand moment between Batman and the middleman. Batman is intensely compassionate. We know this because he's dedicated his life in pretty much every waking moment to helping people. But that compassion follows some very strict rules. Key amongst them is that it very rarely extends to criminals or villains. It makes for the relationship he has with Two-Face all the more special. Not sure how much you know about it yet, but you will. You will. It's an understandable quality given his worldview. Even though this guy says, make them pay, I don't see Batman being the kind of person who would do the whole point of contact through the prison window thing. A person who despises the evil business they're in is still actively participating in that evil. I believe he would feel compassion for the horrible things that happened to this guy in his childhood, but he wouldn't let his mask down so much to show it. Although I'm pretty sure I'm overthinking it.
There's no such thing.
Computer, am I overthinking this?
Right, that's where I got it from. Also forever in my mind, Alfred cuts little bats into Batman's peanut butter on his sandwiches. Great episode. Looking forward to working together.
Ooh, I have a question on that. Now that we've gone further and you've read these last two chapters, do you feel the same way? Do you feel that this Batman...
as I was reading it, I was thinking that. I'm like, I do think that maybe this Batman would be more inclined. The Batman that I am more used to would not do something like that. But this Batman, sure. This Batman, I believe, especially considering that the whole child abuse thing, it seems to have really thrown him for a loop. And I think that finding it kind of an anchor point, even with someone who's actively engaging in this, or who has, regardless of his regret, would probably affect this Batman pretty strongly. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I really like that Vachss, because we so often see thugs and henchmen and whatnot. They're just very two-dimensional. They're just there to be bruisers and be bad guys. But this guy, for the little part that he has in this, it has a very nuanced background that really makes him a sympathetic character despite what he's done. And I don't think we see that very often in the minor Batman villains.
No, not at all.
No.
It's like you were saying, the only time we ever, in Batman proper, the only time we really ever see him carrying in that capacity is either Catwoman, Two-Face, or Mr. Freeze.
Or Mr. Freeze is another one I forgot.
Three.
Two-Face, he has a special invested interest in. Catwoman, there's that romantic aspect, and Freeze is just tragic.
Right, but Batman...
Both him and Dent are tragic.
They are. Very much so.
And the early Batman stories did do that a lot more. It was a lot more about trying to reform them, because there were many stories where you'd have the Penguin or somebody would serve out his term from whatever and then say, I'm going straight. And Batman would encourage him to do so. He would inevitably, go back and do Penguin things.
Penguin things.
And he'd have to go back to jail. But that was always important, and it was a big part of the Adam West show. Especially with Catwoman, and the romance and all of that. But he wants to be with her, but he wants her to renounce her evil ways first.
Right. He wants to be with her, but he wants her to change for him.
Well, yes.
Before you can get under this Velcro, you need to show me that you really need to change.
Well, there's no way we're going to be able to top that, so we should...
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for recording with me tonight. This has been a blast.
Oh, thanks for having us. This was great.
Awesome. So we will touch base again, I'm sure. This will not be the last time.
No.
All right.
Well, that wraps it up for Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. So next time, we're going to cover Chapter 11 and 12. If, like Maggie, you would like to send a message or feedback or questions, you can reach me at BatmanBooks_DKP on Twitter, or at darknightprose@gmail. So until next time, Gothamites, happy reading. Batman was created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. Awesome.
Yay! That was fun.
That was
very fun.